All right, welcome back to Beyond the Lockbox, powered by Emerald Coast Real Producers. I'm here with Tim Weisheyer today, CEO of Strategic Advantage Consulting, broker, amongst many other titles. Good morning, Tim. Welcome. Can you
Morning.
tell me about yourself or the audience and
Sure.
do a quick introduction?
Yeah, I'm happy to. First of all, thank you for hosting me today and allow me to not only spend time with you, but also to continue to invest in your work and your success. And obviously, those that are honored to be able to be a part of what you're doing at the Real Producers and are really moving the needle for what's happening in real estate in your area of the state. So, as you kind of alluded to, I have a 30-year career in real estate. That's probably the first thing that's worth noting. And that spans all areas of real estate. So we own residential companies, commercial companies, we own an investment fund, we own development companies, management companies, and all of that. So for 30 years, I've owned a pretty significant real estate portfolio. I am based in Central Florida. And so I grew up here and still have most of my companies right here in this area of the state. But I think more importantly is I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life. From the time I started in real estate at 19 years old, I always knew that really real estate was something that I was passionate about, I was good at, and I enjoyed. But really, what I was the best at is business and helping people find pathways for success. And so, about 25 years ago, in parallel with everything I was doing with some of the companies I'll just briefly mention to you, I started a consulting company to work with and support other businesses and other leaders to find pathways for success. And so, when I say I'm an entrepreneur, it's not just in the real estate space. We've owned insurance companies and invest in a number of companies from tech to coffee to you name it, everything in between. And so for me, it's always about finding a business or a business opportunity I think makes sense, partnering with and aligning with people to help them find success. And then ultimately in the consulting side, what I've learned is that I'm a teacher by like it's just how I'm wired. I naturally enjoy doing it. I enjoy investing in other people. And so moving into the consulting space, I was getting asked by a number of pretty significant companies, Fortune 100s and 500s and others that we all know and use and wear their brands and consume their products to come in and do strategic planning or leadership development or consulting work. And so I've been doing that in parallel to what I do in the real estate sector for about 25 years now. And so we work with individuals, we work with business owners, entrepreneurs, governments, corporations, institutions, associations, you name it, and really come alongside of either people, leaders, or organizations and help them identify pathways to efficiency, to sustainability, to success, and to being able to ultimately scale. What I have found in truth is that most people, they start a business, whatever it may be. In this case, let's say it's real estate, and they really are working a job and they're not running it like a business. And so, my key goal is how do I help people learn from the successes we've been able to have, take our systems, our framework, our processes, and give them to the people that are working with us to say, now you take it and do it as well. And in truth, partly not only so you can be profitable and productive, but also so you can regain freedom. Most people that are successful are trading off peace of mind and happiness and freedom in their lives for that success. And so I give them the formula of how do I do both? How do I travel around the world and around the country and get to do really great things, but also run very successful companies and at the same time still take care of my family and be present and active in their lives while also serving my community. And I know that's part of what you were alluding to when you said with many other titles, because as you know, I've had the honor of being an elected official. Had the honor of leading very large institutions in the state of Florida and beyond. So there you go. There's a little bit about me. The shorter
Awesome.
version then is I'm Nina's dad. I'm Jack and Kathy's son. That's probably the most important part of all of it. All the good stuff is just what I do. That's not who I am.
That's true. That gets more into the why behind what you do, right?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody in real estate who shows up to do it just because they love to throw a sign in the yard and put a lockbox on the front door. That's
Yeah.
how this came about is, when I got into Real Producers, I started realizing there's a lot more stories behind every person who's doing the job. And the public facing perception is that that's what we do. We throw a sign out
Um,
there, put some pictures up there, get some great headshots once every 20 years, and then we hopefully sell something. But there's truly passion behind what we do. Majority of everybody out there I've met, actually, I haven't met a real estate agent who doesn't have a story on how they got into it or why they got into it. How did you end up in real estate? I know you said when you were 19. I mean, you've been in it 30 years. I was guessing you were 10 when you started.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
how did you get
Yes.
into real estate?
Yeah, so the way I normally storytell this is number one, when I was a kid, everyone knew I was going to be in business. There was never a question. My family, my parents, everyone was like, "This kid is just wired for business." There's two stories that I'll tell. I'll give you the really short version of them. One is that my parents' next door neighbor, so my next door neighbor when I was a kid, owned a number of rental properties. I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I was like 7, 8 years old, but he was always bringing things home, and then giving them to the neighborhood kids. And when I say bringing things home, bikes, skateboards, basketball, soccer balls, whatever it may be. And so I asked my dad, I said, how does he have all this stuff? And my dad said, well, he owns properties and people rent them from him. And if they leave stuff behind that's quality, he brings it back and he gives it to the neighborhood kids. And I said, wait a second. I said, so he owns properties and other people pay them to use them. And he said, yeah. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And that story always stuck with me. I mean, I remember where the conversation was. I remember everything about it. The second one was my parents bought their first home right around the time that I was born and or about to be born actually, and they lived in it for 11 years and then they sold it and they made a significant amount of money. So they bought it for like 32 or $34,000. They sold it about 11 years later for just about $200,000. They were able to take all of that money and they were in their early 30s. They were then completely debt free. They built a brand new home in a different market for cash. They bought two brand new cars. They started my dad's small landscaping company with that money. And I asked my dad, I said, "How are you buying all this stuff?" And now I'm 11. And he said, "Well, the house." And he told me the story. I said, "Wait a second. So the house we grew up in, and I got to play in, and we created all these memories in. The whole time we lived there, it was making money." And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "How does that work?" And so he explained it to me, and I was like, "Wow." I said, "Real estate is remarkable." Those are two, like, I was standing in my dad's bedroom having that conversation with, again, I remember it distinctly. So now I'm 11 years old, and I'm starting to think about real estate in a different way. It's not just four walls and a roof. It's a wealth builder. I was blessed to grow up in a very good family, a very good home. And so I also knew that it wasn't just a wealth builder, it was also a sanctuary. It's also a place where fun and life and joy and goodness and all these things existed. So now you take those two stories and you tie it to where I started. I was always going to be in business. And so by the time I got to kind of the end of middle school, high school, I really started talking about, I think I'm going to go in real estate. I think that's what I'm really interested in. And in truth, by the time I was a sophomore, junior in high school, I'd already decided I'm going in real estate. This is what I want to do. And I had always envisioned doing what I do now. So I started with residential sales and then scatter lot sales. And then I learned commercial and then I learned entitlements and management, all these things along the way. But I always knew that at the end, I was building a career that I wanted recurring income. I wanted real estate assets and portfolios. And so now I spend a good amount of my time in the real estate development side and we know all aspects and we control the companies that deal with all the aspects. But now I'm building significant wealth and opportunity for other people, including for our team, our company, and our investors by having an investment fund and a development company that can take unentitled raw land and something that nobody can
Mm.
see a vision on. And we can create exactly what the market wants and we can monetize it and then share that wealth back with the people that partner with us. So that's kind of the short, it's actually not a 30-year story. That's almost a 40-year story of how I started and how I ended up here.
That's awesome. It's always cool to hear how people got interested or even into it, and real estate is a lot more than just a not a quick sale. It's never quick. It's never easy. But going from one house to the other.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and to your point earlier, I know this is what you were alluding to. Don't let the heart of the story be lost in that, right? I gave you the business side of it, but you know me well, and you know that at my heart, I care for and I value people. And so for
Mhm.
me, I understand that realtors are at the leading edge of making sure we're helping families through the most important, if not one of the most important decisions in their lives. And I always say, for us, we're really either accentuating pleasure or we're reducing pain, right? So I got a promotion, I got a relocation, I got a raise, we're having a baby, we need a new home. Those are all exciting. And so realtors get to come in and be that partner and that advisor for that, in that case, this family to help them. The other side of it is, I lost my loved one. My job is struggling. I just went through a divorce. One of my children are sick. Whatever the case might be, that's the pain and we get to be at the kitchen table with them as well. and be that partner for them. And I think that's something that's often lost in the narrative as a whole, is that
Mhm.
people think that, real estate is just what you see on HGTV or on social media. And it's a lot of really fancy headshots and people laying on Lamborghinis and Corvettes and standing in front of mansions. And that's not the real story. I know the real story. As you know, I had the honor of serving as president of Florida Realtors and leading that organization through one of the most important seasons, times, and opportunities in the entire real estate market. And so I know firsthand how hard realtors work, the difference they make, and the important role that they play.
Oh, absolutely. I have a new client, and yesterday he said he didn't understand what the goal of what I was doing. He's like, "You don't have to call me you're not calling me every day." I'm like, "No, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. My goal is to take the stress away from you, so you focus on your end goal. Let me deal with everything else and moving all the parts and getting people there, understanding inspections and stuff." And he had said that he's like, "Oh, I thought you guys just like wrote contracts." I'm like, "No, there's a lot more that goes on. I just am very good at just being like, here, this is all I need you to do so we can take care of the rest." But there's
Yeah.
always a story behind it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I try to, when I'm doing coaching with agents, one of the things I try to help them understand is how do they effectively look. Storytelling is important in everything in
Mhm.
life and certainly in business. But how do you effectively communicate to your customers who you really are and what you really do? Because otherwise, if we make it look too easy, they question our value, they question the work we
Right.
do, and they don't understand that, yeah, we may have called you and said, in the old days anyway, you have multiple offers on your property. And they think, well, that's easy. Just wave the magic wand. You posted something on Facebook or Instagram, and all of a sudden, all the people showed up. It's like, no, you don't know the 30 things I did before I even worked for you to build the apparatus that brings people to us and the teams and the investments that I made to be able to do these things. So it's one of the things I try to help agents work through is you're doing a lot of work that people don't know and understand, and how do you effectively communicate that with them, and then how do you build systems internally to make sure that you can streamline it. That's one of the things that I'm really good at. Is It's why I get hired to do a lot of business and strategic planning for individuals and companies. Is I'm really good at taking a lot of really kind of disconnected and disparate parts and synthesizing them and building a very systematic approach of how you can either put the right things in place for yourself or your company to ultimately create efficiency, effectiveness, and ultimately profitability.
So you touched on something there when you said you were working with other businesses. And I know that your consulting company doesn't just focus on consulting with real estate agents or brokerages. You go across a wide variety of businesses. And that's real producers across not just here. There's 150 publications, so we're across the US in multiple markets. And my my goal with all of my partners in the magazine, because they're all entrepreneurs as well. Most of these are small businesses. I don't think I have one that's a corporate business in there. But how do you, because you see all these different businesses, what is there any common denominator that you see with scaling and building the business and keeping it going?
There is. Yeah. Thank you for the question, because it's really it's at the heartbeat of what we do. So the simple answer to your question is yes, there's commonality. There's commonality and not there's a shift that has to happen. Most people are in a business. One, like take real estate. And I'm just going to use as the example to make the bigger example. Is they want endless opportunity and income, and they want freedom. Well, I always say you get one or the other. You don't get both. Right? You can have both, but it takes discipline and
Mhm.
focus and systems in order to make that happen. Um, so what happens typically is somebody is good at something. In this case, let's say selling real estate. And then they say, well, I want to run a team. Well, running a team is very different than selling real estate. Or I want to start a brokerage. Well, running a brokerage is very different than selling real estate. Or someone's a photographer and they're really good at it. And they say, okay, well, I'm a photographer, but now I want to create a photography company. Totally different situation. So one of the things is that they're not looking at how do they take their work, their craft, and then turn it into a real manageable, scalable business. We actually have training that we do with businesses across all different sectors that will break down every single part of what it looks like to run an effective business. We teach it really in two parts, but I say three. The first phase is that people will come and participate in a session that I'll host with them. Let's say we have 100 businesses in the room, and I give them the knowledge set. And I say, this is exactly how you need to run your business. These are the steps, these are the tools, these are the pain points, so on and so forth. The next step of it is a lot of people have access to knowledge, but they don't necessarily implement it. And so we always say people don't have like a planning problem, they have an execution problem, right? So in this case, it's not that I have a knowledge problem, it's that I have an implementation problem. The next stage of that is us then working with them one on one. It's like, I shouldn't say one on one, it's in a group setting, but in a small group setting where we're saying, okay, now let's take all these principles that we apply to all these other companies, including yours, and now let's infuse them into your business. Those are the two parts. The third part becomes that there are people that will say, hey, you taught me what to do, you've shown me how to do it, but now I want someone to support me along the way, either hold me accountable, encourage me, or to be a trusted advisor for me and how to do it. And then that's when we come in and we do executive coaching or business coaching with people and say, let us walk alongside of you during the implementation phase and make sure that it wasn't time wasted of learning it and putting in place, but it actually sees itself all the way through to the end. Some of the common things to your question, it's how do we grow a team? If you're going to be successful in business, unless you want to be a solopreneur, which is fine, you're going to need leverage. Well, leverage is people in a lot of ways. Yes, it's tech and all these other things. Well, how do you hire the right people? And then beyond
Right.
that, how do you train them? And then how do you support them? When do you meet with them? And how often do you meet with them? And what is it that you actually discuss and do when you meet with them? People will host meetings to host meetings. And it's like, well, your team's not moving because you're not communicating the right things the right way, or you're not holding the right people accountable, or you're not assigning the right tasks. Or one of the challenges for a lot of people is you're simply just not delegating. It's really hard for people to delegate. And so we talk to them about the importance of delegation and getting some of these things off of your plate. And I'll use myself as this example. You know this because we're connected on social and sometimes I will post on there. The only way that I'm able to run all of these organizations and all these companies and still travel around the world and do the things I do is because I've hired really smart people and I surround myself with people. And I always say people don't work for me, they work with me. And so I train business owners. How do you build that culture and how do you build those systems? The other pain point, which is common across all businesses, is revenue. It's inconsistent. And if you run on an inconsistent revenue stream, you're going to be on this roller coaster ride and it's going to be painful. And it doesn't have to be. And so we teach how do you actually build consistent revenue? But beyond that, how do you build the right banking framework for yourself to ensure that when that revenue is there, you're building the right reserves in the right way with the right type of accounts and building all of that out. We talk about marketing, we talk about leadership, we talk about systems and processes. All of those things are the things that either will help a business succeed or ensure that it fails. And unfortunately, the data is working against us. The vast majority of new businesses fail within 5 years. And in fact, when you look at it within 2 years, the number is very high. Within 5 years, it's insane and it's disappointing. And so it's a personal mission of mine as part of what I believe is what I'm gifted at and I'm called and I get to do to help other people is I want to see more small businesses and large, but I want to see more small businesses succeed and I want to take the formulas that I've used over 30 years of being successful in every one of these verticals and say, put this in place. And I'm nationally certified in it and all those type of things. And that's great. But at the end of the day, it's a direct relationship. It's me sitting with the business owner and saying, okay, let's talk this through. What are your real goals? Where do you want to go? And that's key. And it's unfortunately it's universal.
That's that's a lot, to take in, but there's a lot there and to unpack, and, I'm gonna encourage everybody to go to your website and take a look because you guys have some great blogs and videos. I know I've joined some of your, free webinars that you have occasionally, and I've gotten a lot out of it, like how to tone down my social media and how to make sure I have a proper presence in what I'm trying to sell. Because I have 2 different very different avenues with real estate and real producers, and they're giving 2 different messages and 2 different audiences, so
Yeah.
I know I've seen a difference in it and my engagement and been able to convert some of the leads off of there, but you have a lot of information that you're not gonna find in books or taking
Yeah.
courses, and you are in a crowded market space in the consulting side. I feel like everybody's an online coach lately.
Yeah.
I see that pop up all the time.
Yes.
How do you guys, like, separate yourself from that? Because there's a lot out there. I mean, you scroll on TikTok and every other person's got a new workbook that you can download.
Yeah. So look, I talk a little bit about this. So first of all, thank you for your compliment on our content. And we're actually developing a lot of new content that'll be released here very soon. We've been investing significantly in our content and what we're going to be putting out to make sure we're not only giving free and direct value to those that work with us and follow us, but also, but kind of behind the veil and kind of behind the paywall as well to say, look, if you really want to get serious about some of these things, you don't have to pay to fly me in anymore. I can bring it to you digitally and we can train you. We can, just like you and I are doing,
Mhm.
our conversation now, technology's created a lot of opportunities. To your question, if I were being candid, I would tell you I find it frustrating when I see these things because, to your point, everyone is a coach and everybody's an expert and everybody's a trainer, and now everyone does strategic planning. And I'm like, it's so disheartening to me because a lot of times they're selling something that they haven't actually achieved themselves. And so when you ask the question, what really sets us apart? Is there's a difference between theory and application. And there's also a difference between somebody that's worked in one vertical, only knows one vertical, and only knows how to communicate it with it. And beyond that, has only worked in one market cycle. As shared, I'm a 30-year professional and a 30-year professional across multiple verticals and very deep and very wide in the real estate space. So that's an easy one for me to lead through and to teach through. And so one of the things that we stand out on is that number one, we genuinely care. I mean, and you know this. Anyone who knows me knows that. If they get to know me for 10 minutes, they immediately go, he's not just a business person who wants to sell a
Yes.
product or service. He's someone who genuinely cares about and values people. And my goal in life is not just to make money. My goal in life is to create impact in the lives of others, period, point blank and stop. That's it. All the other stuff is the extra that gets to come with it. So number one is you find that we care in a very real way. We are directly connected and invested in the well-being of the people we work with. The second thing is we're not teaching from theory. We're not saying, well, do this and do this, but we've never done it ourselves. I'm telling people how to do things. I've worked through multiple recessions. I've led through pandemics. I've led some of the biggest institutions. I mean, president of the Florida Realtors, president of the Florida School Boards. I've led the busiest airport in the state of Florida on behalf of the governor on the board of trustees for Florida State University, one of the largest universities and one of the most successful in the nation. And the list goes on. So everything that I'm teaching from is something that I've personally worked through. And you think about going through different market cycles. I had the pleasure, I would say, of being the president of my realtor association in the midst of the Great Recession, when 83 to 86% of all transactions were a distressed sale, a short sale, or an REO property, and real estate revenue was plummeting for everybody, and people were losing their homes, and realtors were trying to figure out how to keep their own home, let alone help other people keep their home. And even while I was in that market, one of my closest friends, who's 20 years my senior, works with our consulting company, actually. He's the one who originally got me into consulting. He said to me, Tim, he said, it's so interesting. He said, I see what's going on in real estate and everyone else is like hunkering down and running for the hills. And he's like, and you're doubling down. Like you're expanding your companies. He's like, why? And I said, because I'm preparing for the next wave. I see where things are, but that's not relevant to me. I see where things are going to be. And so I was preparing in 2007, 8, and 9 for 2011, 12, and 13, where everyone else is just hunkering down. And when we went further in the conversation, one of the things I said to him, I said, one of the things you want to bear in mind is that I stopped buying real estate. The last piece of real estate I bought was November 1st of 2004. And everybody thought I was nuts. They're like, "Why aren't you buying real estate?" In '04, the market was great. It wasn't great. It was overinflated and prices were overinflated, and I knew that. In 2005, I completely cashed out of the stock market and sold all of my stocks. And I asked my father, I said, "You should cash out too." He goes, "No, I'm making a lot of money." I said, "It's all going to crash." And it's not that I had a crystal ball. I don't, but I'm a true expert and I understand what it is. And so, because I was making those decisions when everybody else was on the gravy train, I was already preparing for a recession. I didn't know it was going to be as deep or as long as it was, but I knew it was going to hurt and it was going to hurt a lot of people. So I prepared for that in '04. And then when we hit it in '07 and everybody else was running for the hills, I was like, I'm ready. I'm about to expand. And so we did. And so by the time we hit 2011, we were taking off when everyone else was really just regaining their footing. And so when you think about working with people and what sets us apart, it's those type of things is that we're not just responding to what's happening in a marketplace. I am creating what's happening in a marketplace. And you know this from a real estate standpoint, the honor I had to be able to serve as the president of Florida Realtors, whether it's the creation of the Hometown Heroes housing program, that was something my hand was directly involved in. Property tax conversation, absolutely involved in that conversation. insurance reform that took place in 2022. I mean, the list just goes on, capping non-homesteaded properties, right? So we're at the leading edge of what's going on with the Florida economy, the US economy, what's happening in education, what's happening with institutions, what's happening in real estate. So we don't speak from theory, we're speaking from true practical knowledge. And when someone says, well, what should I do here? I can speak to it because I'm like, I was just in the room the other day with the people that are making those decisions. And here's what I'm preparing for. And this is what you should prepare for too. Where I find most people are just like, well, I Googled this and it said these are 5 steps to build your business. It's like, okay, well, that was written based on old data that doesn't take in place what's going on right now.
Yeah, I see a lot of those pop up in the quick downloads, and I'm wondering how many downloads people have that I mean, maybe some of them work, but that they're just not implementing, or it doesn't resonate because it's not specific to what they need to do and how they need to grow. Because even every realtor, there's so many different niches that you can follow or fall under. My specialty is short-term rentals, investment properties, and looking at buildings as the return, not necessarily first-time home buyers. So I like the way you put that, and it's comforting knowing that you understand where you're at as far as a crowded market space and how you guys stand out. Um, I get to talk to a lot of people who are very successful, especially in the real estate side of things, and some of our partners. What do you do to keep yourself driven every day? Because that's a lot. You do a lot.
Mm,
And I joke about you being around everywhere. Like, where in the world is Tim today?
yeah, it's kind of that where in the world is Carmen San
Yes.
Diego or Waldo, whatever you want to apply to me. So look, one thing I share with people, I just said I was in Sarasota yesterday speaking to a leadership group, and one of the things I told them, and this will answer your question partly, is that I don't stop learning. So even this morning, I mean, I was up at I don't know 4:30, 4:45 this morning, whatever it was. I normally am up around 5:30, but when I wake up, my first thing isn't grab my phone and get on social media. I'm really not interested in it. Um, I wake up and I learn, I read, I study, I focus on something that I know that I want to get better at. And so I'm hyper motivated in creating an impact. In every part of my life, it's always about how do I make a difference for others. And it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy life. I do. I mean, I'm very fortunate, and I've been fortunate to be successful. But I am motivated because it's seeing other people. It's when I speak yesterday to a leadership group, and however many people, doesn't matter, 2, 10, 20, or 200, come up to me at the end and say thank you. Like, I've never heard that message that way, and I've never heard it from somebody who's lived through it and can talk about it in a way that I can really relate to and connect to, and I get to then invest in their success. And it's the messages and the note cards that people send to say thank you. You don't know you made this difference in my life 20 years ago, but I'm doing this now. And so that's a constant motivation for me. I am an unapologetic, proud American and proud Floridian. I think we are so incredibly fortunate to live in this country. That is something that, I don't get to take credit for. I just happen to be born here. Or for those of us that weren't born here, we get to live here. So it's, man, we get to live in such a remarkable place and a remarkable time. And, I understand what's happening on the macro economy level and what's really going on between, whether it's the US and China or Russia or Ukraine or this or Venezuela, you pick it. And how does all that really play into the marketplace? And so I'm like, man, I'm blessed to live where I live. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to make sure that future generations get to inherit an even better state, an even better community, or better country than I inherited. So that certainly motivates and inspires me. My faith is paramount for me. And so I know that the stuff that I do is not just here on earth. It's not just about, eat, drink, and be merry. It's about, am I creating true impact? Am I showing up for people in a real way? Am I speaking directly to their hearts and being intentional about seeing who they are and valuing who they are, and the impact that they can then bring to life. It's one of the hardest things for me to see is when I know that people are hurting, I know that I have the tools or the skills or the ability to come alongside of them and support them. I want to. It absolutely motivates and inspires me. The other thing is, I think that I don't think I know a lot of people. They are going through life, and they're not living life. They're not choosing what life is going to look like. They're just responding, reacting to whatever life throws at them. And that's not the life I want to live. It's not the life I want other people to live. So I'm motivated by the idea of saying, how do I help you live a purposeful life? And so I say this in business. I'm like, don't just run the business you have, run the business you want. And that's a big difference because most people are not creating what they want in the future. They're just dealing with what they have right in front of them.
Uh, That's really good. I just had that conversation and having your passion and your it sounds like you have your non-negotiables and that you have to have set for what you believe in and what you're gonna do and how you're gonna help people. I think that you have it really dialed in on what you are doing with people, and it shows in all of the work and how you move and what you do, regardless of if it's with Florida Realtors or if it's in the real estate, space. I remember the first time I got to see you speak was at a um, broker breakfast out in Crestview a few years ago. And I think you were, I don't know what level you were, if you're vice president or president elect. It all blends together now.
Mhm.
But hearing how you set up, and you were talking about how important brokers were. And at the time, I thought my broker was just there to hold my license and make
Mhm.
sure I didn't go to jail. Um, but being able to break that down for people is huge. And you do it in a very succinct way.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else outside of work that you do? Because I mean, I don't
Sure.
the amount of stuff you do, it sounds like, okay, so when do you sleep and when do you relax?
Often. So I mean, like, it sounds silly, but it's true. I am very intentional about life. And what I always tell people is that in my business life, I'm very scheduled and very regimented. And so I have a team that supports me. And I actually have two ladies that I always say my right and my left hand. In fact, on my group text, they're called the bosses, because they really are the ones that, they control my schedule and all those things. But we've all agreed as a team, these are our priorities. This is what we want to do. So during the business day or the week, I'm very structured. And so it's okay, do this time, don't do this. I'm very intentional about what I do and don't want to spend my time on. If I know I'm really good at something, I may do it. If I know I'm really bad at something, I'm perfectly okay with hiring somebody or delegating to somebody else. I don't have an ego around any of that. That's a key thing that most people struggle with is they're trying to do everything. I don't. And it's part of why I have the freedom that other people have. So the first thing is um, structuring my time. I always tell people, most people only have 24 hours in a day, but in truth, they really don't. They really only have about 18 because they probably waste about six of them every day. They just don't know they do. And so I have six extra hours in a day than most people because of the way that I've built our systems and processes. But in business, I'm scheduled. In my personal life, I am the most easygoing person you'll meet. I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. I'm very adventurous. I'm very outgoing. I love the outdoors. So whether I'm in the woods or on a boat or, jumping out of a plane or you name it, like anything like that, I'm all in for. Um, I love being with friends. I love being with family. I love travel. I love adventure. And so, what you'll find is that, Monday through Thursday is very structured for me, from pretty much like 7 to 6, 7 to 7, kind of in that time frame. But even within that, it's programmed out. But then, you call me at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday and say, "Hey, I have a great idea. Let's go do this." I'm like, "That sounds like fun. Let's go." And my weekends are protected. They always have been. One of the things I try to teach people on is, I always say, like, our phones are great, but I would say they're the greatest blessing and greatest curse for everyone unless you know how to use it. And so my phone, it doesn't ring, it doesn't vibrate, it doesn't light up. I don't get social media notifications. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that, or they don't know how to do that, and that's fine. You don't have to. But most people are just reacting or responding to everything that's happening around them, and they're not picking and choosing what they're going to do. And so for me, I'm intentional about protecting my sleep, my health, what I eat. I view food as fuel, not just as something to consume. I'm not crazy though. I'm not like, some fanatic about things around any of those things. It's just stuff that I'm intentional about. I also truly believe that, and I know this. I mean, if you ask anyone, do you want to live a long, happy, and healthy life? Their answer is always yes. And then the second question, if you're smart, would be, okay, well, what are you doing to ensure you are? And for most
Mhm.
people, they're not. They're not paying attention to their emotional health or their mental health or their physical health or their spiritual health or their financial health or whatever it may be. And so for me, I work hard to strike, we'll say the balance, but that perfect balance of life of how do I make sure, you know, Courtney, my daughter was just in town 2 weeks ago. How do I make sure I disconnect and we're at Volcano Bay and Islands of Adventure and Universal and just having fun and playing? And then, how do I make sure that, the next moment I lock in and I meet with a business owner or a mayor or a commissioner or a council member, whatever it may be, and help establish policy that's going to benefit more constituents, more Floridians, and more Americans. So I'm just very intentional about what it is. And to your point, I know who I am. I know who I'm not. I know there are some things I'm really good at, and there are a lot of things I'm really, really bad at. And I'm okay with accepting both. The things I know I'm really bad at, if I think I can learn them or they're worth me learning, I lean in. And if I'm like, no, I'm bad at this and I don't think it's my gifting, it's not my talent, then I'm going to call you and ask you to do it, or I'm going to bring you on my team, or I'm going to find a way to invest in you, or I'm going to hire a company or consultant or coach to say, help me do this stuff because I'm not good at it. And we all need people in our lives because we're not all good at everything. And I'm certainly not
Mhm.
either. And that is a key learning piece that most people struggle with. Because most people are scared to admit their failures, their flaws, or their faults, and so they try to hide them. And you're not really hiding them. I mean, we see them anyway, and so people see them in me, the things that I'm not good at. I just don't hide them. I just go, "Don't give that to me. I'll screw it up. I'm the last person you want working on that, but give me this one because this one I'm really good at, and I can help you with."
There is power in the word no and
Yeah,
putting things down. That's probably one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 2 years is that you don't have to do everything. You just have to know who can do things
yeah,
better.
yeah.
And your no alerts thing, I remember you post something on social and I was teasing you about it, and that's given me a few hours of my day back. And
Hmm.
I have time blocked, like I'll check Instagram here or Facebook because that's where a lot of leads for real producers comes in. But if it's not scheduled, then I don't look at it.
Yeah, smart.
It's easy to get drowned into the death scroll
Yep.
or distracted on what you're not doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap us up. I always ask everybody, so who is Tim behind the lockbox?
Yeah.
Or behind the
So is
lockbox?
that a real estate question or Tim behind the lockbox, the person?
The person.
Yeah. So the truth of it is, I'm a dad at my core. I absolutely love, 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 love being a father. I always have. For me, I would say that the way I normally describe it to people is it's faith, family, and freedom. And if you really want to think about it, and you because we're realtors and we're involved, it'd be faith, family, freedom, and Florida homes. But but in truth, it really is. It's faith, family, freedom. So I want to make sure that I'm living a life that is good and honorable in the best way that I can. I'm flawed. I make mistakes. We all do. But that's a big piece for me. I want to make sure that I'm not sacrificing the people and the relationships that are the most important to me. I'm fortunate that I have my parents with me still. I'm intentional about going out with my dad and playing golf and just trying to spend time with them and going to have coffee with my mom and going to dinner and doing all those things. My brother and my sisters are incredibly important to me. So investing in my extended family and my nieces and nephews. So for me, faith, family, and then the freedom piece really ties into the business side as well. It's that I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe we live in the best place on earth. And, everyone has their own politics, and that's fine. You don't have to agree or disagree with the politics of it to just understand that when this republic was established under our constitutional framework, we were afforded some pretty remarkable rights and freedoms. And those rights and freedoms were given to us by God and not the government. And so my passion is helping people understand what that means and what that really looks like. And how can somebody like me, who didn't grow up in wealth at all, my parents didn't go to college, my dad cut grass every single day for other people, and my mom worked in education. How does somebody like me go from being just a normal middle America kid to being able to do the things that I do and succeed the way that I succeed? And the answer is not because I'm remarkable, because I'm not. I'm normal like everyone else. It's because this country is remarkable. And then if you're intentional about leaning into that and understanding the value that comes with it, then you can find success. So for me, you're going to see me faith, family, freedom, and investing in the people that I have the honor of interacting with every day. And by the way, that includes the cashier and the bagger at Publix. That includes the attendant at a gas station. That includes the clerk at a retail store or the server at a restaurant. For me, every person I meet, I want to make sure they know that I see them, I value them, I respect them, and that they provide some value back to me in my life. And it doesn't matter what role they have, what job they have, what title they have, they're a blessing in some way. And I want to make sure that I show up for people in a real way every single day.
I love that. Thank you. That gives a lot more insight beyond the man who runs everything and flies everywhere.
Yeah, thank you.
And so for those who are listening, how would they get in touch with you to work with you on the consulting side or through real estate, whichever one you want to promote?
Sure. Yeah. So on the consulting side, our website is Go Strategic ADV, like advantage, but ADV.com. So Go Strategic ADV.com. My personal cell phone number, it's 407-460-3211. And people can text me. Calling me, you can try. I just don't answer a lot of calls, but reach out and text and ask me questions and let me know. I would say that the best thing that I would recommend, though, is go to our website, follow our socials if you want. We don't do a ton on social right now. A lot of it is direct relationships that we're doing and that kind of broad based marketing across the ethos. But, go to a website, register, and get lined up for our newsletters, our drops, our content. If you want someone that's going to care about your well being and coach you or support you, whether you're a small business owner and any one of your partners, a broker, or your top producer, you have somebody who understands business probably better than most and is willing to help you. And I welcome those conversations. We don't just take on anyone and everyone. We're pretty particular about who we work with. We know that our time and our energy has to be protected, and we want to make sure we're investing in people that truly want to succeed and are going to put in the work to do it. And if you are, then we'd love to support you. And if you're not, then we'll support you. But we'll just support you in a different way, and we'll give you content and information, and we'll be there to cheer you on every step of the way.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, and I really do appreciate getting to know you, your business, and what you do. I know I get to see you online all the time with all your adventures, so that's really cool. And yeah, just appreciate you being here. Well, thank you.
Well, I'm honored. Reach out anytime. I'm glad to help. And thanks for the partnership we get to share with you and your team and what you're doing. You're the people that get to be a part of real producers in your market are some incredibly hardworking people, and they didn't get there by mistake. It came with a lot of sacrifice and focus and discipline. And if we can help them go to the next level, that's what we're here to do. And I don't take for granted our partnership with you and what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
great one.
Thanks. You too.